we were looking for something completely different. No one ever believed that was possible. So, no, it was a great feeling when we found it.
Deep under the waves, a Nazi Germany submarine waited in silence. Salvage divers thought they were hunting for rust and metal. Instead, they uncovered something so strange, so unexpected, it left everyone speechless. What was trapped inside had been waiting to be found for decades. Join us as we uncover this new discovery, the lost U-boat. During World War II, detailed records were kept of all battles, movements, and missions, whether meticulously or hastily. Amidst all this, there was a German submarine known as U-869. According to historical documents, U-869 was assigned to patrol the waters near the Strait of Gibraltar, a busy area frequented by Allied ships. The submarine's task was straightforward: to sneak up, attack, and then vanish. However, things did not go as planned. In February 1945, an unexpected event occurred. A United States Coast Guard ship reported that they had destroyed a German submarine near Gibraltar. The Allied forces were pleased with this news and considered it another victory against the Nazis. They identified the submarine as U-869, completed the necessary paperwork, and moved on, thinking the threat was eliminated. For many years, this story was left untouched. The U.S. Navy and historians did not investigate further. The families of the 56 German sailors also accepted that this was where their loved ones perished. The submarine was considered just another casualty of war. There was no photographic or sonar evidence, and no wreck was officially confirmed. The only record of the incident was a report from a chaotic time in the Atlantic Ocean. Coordinations were hastily noted down amid battles and chaos, making accuracy difficult. However, officials decided to close the U-869 case. They believed the submarine had disappeared near Gibraltar, but in reality, the true U-869 was still out there, unnoticed and forgotten by everyone. The final mission of U-869 was riddled with errors and confusion in communication. On December 29, 1944, German command initially instructed U-869 to patrol near the New Jersey coast. However, concerns arose about the submarine not having enough fuel to carry out this mission, prompting a change in orders. The new directive was for U-869 to alter its course and patrol west of Gibraltar, specifically avoiding the narrow strait. However, this is where problems began to arise. U-869 did not respond to the new order they were given. The submarine remained radio silent. The most recent communication from them was on January 10, 1945, when they reported their fuel status. However, they did not provide information on their current location or acknowledge receipt of the updated mission. The German command assumed that U-869 was already en route to Gibraltar. When the submarine vanished without any additional updates, it was presumed lost in that area. The situation did not change for the next 40 years. People believed that U-869 had disappeared near Gibraltar. The families of the German sailors had no physical evidence to remember them by, only their names on memorials. There was no burial site or wreckage, just lingering questions that no one seemed to care about anymore. However, some military historians were unable to ignore their doubts about the Gibraltar story. As they delved deeper into their research, they became increasingly convinced that something was amiss. Many years later, their persistence paid off when wreckage was discovered in the ocean, not in Gibraltar but off the shore of New Jersey, the very location where U-869 had been instructed to go. Everyone was surprised by this finding. People were wondering how a dangerous German submarine that was thought to be missing near Gibraltar could end up near the coast of New Jersey. It was discovered that U-869 most likely did not change its route. The submarine may not have been given new orders to change its patrol location. It is also possible that they chose to ignore the orders for reasons that are unclear. Regardless, U-869 remained near New Jersey and ultimately met its demise there. The discovery made a huge impact. Families had believed their relatives passed away in a location they never made it to. The submarine had been missing from records but was silently resting underwater, ready to be discovered. The story of U-869 shows us how easily errors can be believed as truth, particularly during war when chaos, anxiety, and hasty choices prevail. What appeared to be a closed case had many mistakes and overlooked facts. Ultimately, it was the determination of individuals who continued investigating and questioning that ultimately revealed the true story of U-869. For 40 years, U-869 was believed to be lost in the wrong location. It was only after a long time that the truth surfaced, showing that sometimes the most unexpected discoveries can be found in places where no one expects to find. The hidden ghost. Let's go back to the summer of 1991, when the weather was hot and the beaches were crowded with people. Classic rock music was popular at the time. Near Point Pleasant, New Jersey, a surprising event was about to take place. A group of daring divers were set to discover something that would have a big impact on military history. These divers were not ordinary. They were experienced wreck divers who searched for sunken ships and underwater mysteries as passionately as others pursue their hobbies. John Chatterton and Richie Kohler, known as two of the most fearless wreck divers on the East Coast, were among them. Instead of looking for beautiful fish or hidden treasures, these men were technical divers who braved the cold, dark, and hazardous areas of the ocean that most people would never venture into. They dedicated their weekends to exploring the deep sea, diving into the depths where one wrong move could be fatal. During that summer, the goal was straightforward: to investigate unfamiliar shipwrecks resting peacefully on the seabed. They employed sonar technology to scan below the sea surface, aiming to find wrecks that had not been found by anyone else. The sea off the coast of New Jersey was similar to a submerged cemetery, with sunk ships from previous wars, severe storms, and tragic mishaps. It served as a recreational area for divers exploring wrecks, a location where history lay dormant beneath the water. One day, the underwater scanning equipment found something unusual on the seafloor 60 miles away from land. It wasn't the typical shape of a ship, instead resembling a long, slim submarine. Intrigued by the discovery, they decided to investigate further by planning a dive. Their initial visit to the unknown wreck did not happen smoothly. The strong and turbulent current made it difficult for them to stay stable. The visibility underwater was very poor, with darkness, coldness, and fishing nets covering everything. They could only spot a few feet ahead of them, and the wreck itself was in a deteriorated condition, twisted and partially buried in sand and debris. Navigating through the wreck felt like exploring a spooky metal cave, with every step posing a potential danger. Despite the risks and fears, the experience was also exhilarating. Right from the first dive, they both sensed that this was not an ordinary shipwreck, but something of great significance. Once back above ground, they started searching through old documents. They thought they would easily identify what they had discovered. However, all the records they found stated the same thing. There were no reports of a German U-boat sinking in that vicinity. In fact, based on information from World War II, the last U-boat sighting was far away, near the Strait of Gibraltar. This left them wondering about the object they had come across. The submarine they found was missing any markings that could identify it. It had no hull number or name painted on it, making it difficult to figure out its history. The submarine appeared to be a mystery, with its twisted steel and sealed hatches suggesting that it had been lost at sea for a long time. Both Chatterton and Kohler were intrigued by their discovery, as the submarine was not supposed to be in that location according to official records. They gave the mysterious submarine a nickname and set out on a mission to uncover its true identity. They kept returning to the wreck repeatedly. The dives were lengthy, perilous, and draining. It was not a simple pastime. These dives wanted careful planning, utilizing special gas mixtures to survive the deep pressures and icy temperatures. Each dive posed life-threatening dangers. They had to meticulously follow decompression procedures to avoid getting the bends, be wary of hypoxia, and remain vigilant for deadly hazards inside the deteriorating submarine. The metal walls were at risk of collapsing unexpectedly, and wires and debris could easily entangle them. Every time they entered, it felt like a race against time. With every dive, they inched closer to uncovering the truth. The submarine gradually revealed its hidden details. They stumbled upon gauges labeled in German. They also came across dials indicating measurements in the metric system. Despite being damaged, the compartments were largely preserved. Each new piece of information drew them further into the enigma. During one of their dives, they discovered something small yet significant. They found a rusty butter knife with the name Horenberg etched on it. This knife ended up being the crucial piece in solving the mystery. Once back on shore, they scoured naval records in search of any information related to the name. Eventually, they came across the record of Georg Horenberg, a crew member on the German submarine U-869. Finally, they discovered what they had come across: the missing U-869, a German U-boat that disappeared during World War II. This was unexpected because the submarine's last known location was on the other side of the Atlantic. Yet, there it was. peacefully resting off the coast of New Jersey. Although they found the answer, it raised more questions. They wondered how the U-869 ended up there, what caused it to sink, why this information was unknown, and why history had disregarded it. The discovery had a significant impact but also left unanswered mysteries in its wake. Chatterton and Kohler's search for a submarine was more than just a mission. It turned into a brave and patient quest, driven by their passion for discovering hidden secrets. They went after a mysterious ghost, putting their lives at risk to uncover a long-lost secret hidden underwater for years. Their expedition demonstrates that amazing stories are sometimes forgotten by the world. The butter knife that unlocked a sunken secret. Richie Kohler and John Chatterton had been diving deep for many years, exploring shipwrecks and solving mysteries hidden beneath the sea. But nothing fascinated them as much as the strange submarine they discovered off the coast of New Jersey. Unlike other wrecks they had seen, this submarine was a mystery with no known identity. There were no records or explanations, just an unidentified submarine lying on the ocean floor. The two divers had a strong feeling that the sunken ship they were exploring was a German U-boat. It appeared and gave off the vibe of being one, but they encountered an issue. There were no documents or records proving that a German U-boat had ever gone down in that location. Based on historical accounts and naval records, it was not the designated area for such a submarine to be found. Something just did not align with the information they had been given. Richie and John were unable to stop thinking about the submarine. They were determined to find evidence to give it a name. They searched through the wreck for a long time but couldn't find any useful information. Despite examining its equipment and structure, they felt like they were chasing a ghost. It seemed like the submarine was intent on keeping its secret hidden. Everything took a turn when they found a butter knife with a name on it during a dive. This discovery became their first important lead in solving the mystery. The name on the knife belonged to a former crew member of the submarine. Richie and John put in extra effort after finding a new clue. They researched old shipyard records and sifted through dusty files. They reached out to a German shipbuilding company that made submarines during the war. They meticulously compared serial numbers and engine parts, searching for any evidence linking the submarine to the name on the butter knife. One by one, everything started to make sense. Each document, number, and part they examined all told the same story. The shipwreck they found turned out to be the missing U-869. No one had known its fate for many years. 56 crew members were on board when it vanished. Now the submarine had been identified and the story of the lost sailors could finally come to light. However, the tale did not conclude at that point. As the divers persisted in reconstructing the ultimate instance of U-869, they stumbled upon something even more unexpected. In the documents, they came across the identity of an individual who was meant to be aboard the submarine but was absent. This man was Herbert Gushevsky. He had undergone training alongside the crew, practiced the same routines, shared sleeping quarters with them, and passed away for the identical operation. He was considered as a member of the team. However, fate had a different outcome in store. Shortly before the submarine was set to depart, Herbert became very sick. This unexpected turn of events had a lasting impact on his life. Due to his illness, he was unable to join the last journey of the submarine. Little did he know that sickness ended up being a blessing in disguise. None of his comrades or friends who he had trained with survived. Herbert spent years assuming that his submarine had disappeared in the Mediterranean, miles away from New Jersey. Years later, Richie and John contacted Herbert, unsure if he was still alive. They had been investigating the past, and Herbert's name came up. Herbert was surprised when they found him, as everything he knew for over 50 years was being challenged. The divers displayed pictures of the sunken ship to him. They pointed out different sections of the submarine, personal belongings, and eventually, the butter knife, the very one that sparked this whole adventure. Herbert recognized the name on the butter knife. It belonged to a former crewmate and close friend he had worked with before. Herbert had vivid memories of him. That simple, overlooked knife revealed more about the situation than any document ever could. Herbert was an elderly man who realized he had narrowly avoided death while his friends had disappeared without a trace. He never desired fame or attention, but he remained in contact with the divers who were searching for the lost crew members. He quietly assisted them in identifying other sailors and verifying information from the German perspective. His personal memories contributed a unique aspect that official records could not offer. Herbert passed away in 2005 without ever seeing the submerged submarine or the sealed compartments inside. It's possible he knew about them, but he never mentioned it. The mystery of whether he knew will always linger. However, what is certain is that a basic butter knife revealed a story that had been hidden underwater for 50 years. This tiny object played a crucial role in unraveling a mystery that had been resting at the ocean floor. Two determined divers persevered and diligently followed every lead, regardless of how insignificant, until they finally uncovered the truth. A journey through time. John Chatterton, Richie Kohler, and their team went deep into the wreck of U-869. It was more than just a sunken machine, but a hidden world frozen in time. The submarine was not just twisted metal, but also a story, a memory, and a tomb. Every corner they explored and every door they opened brought them closer to the forgotten lives of the men who lived there. As soon as they stepped into the submarine, it felt like stepping into a chilly, quiet memory. The walls used to be filled with the sounds of laughter, footsteps, and quick talks, but now they were motionless and silent. In the past, these walls resonated with activity. Currently, the atmosphere was heavy, like the untold stories within were eager to be shared. The divers first checked out the crew quarters. The area was very small and crowded, with bunks stacked closely together. The beds were just big enough for one person. Some of the beds still had old, rotting bedrolls on them. A few books were also found, their pages swollen from being underwater for years but still legible. It was impressive to see how some items had managed to survive. Next, the divers went to the mess hall, where they saw remnants of daily life. Plates were still on the tables, and utensils were scattered on the floor, as if the people who left them never returned. A ration tin sat untouched on one of the tables, making it seem like someone left for a short break, but never returned. The room was filled with a heavy silence, as though it held memories that had been forgotten for decades. These soldiers were not just characters from history books anymore. They were real, young men. Some were 19 years old, while others were in their early 20s. They spent their time on the submarine chatting, laughing, debating, and thinking about going back home. These were young boys trying to stay alive in wartime while holding on to fragments of normalcy. The divers discovered an open locker with personal items inside like leather gloves, a rusty harmonica, and a deck of playing cards. Despite being in the midst of a war and surrounded by danger, someone still had space for music and games. This served as a reminder that the men on the ship were human with emotions and moments of happiness. The divers proceeded further into the control room. It was a cramped area with damaged buttons, broken glass, and old levers covered in rust. Some of the gauges had cracked from the immense underwater pressure, while others remained intact on the walls. The controls were labeled in German and numbered, showing how they used to guide the submarine. It was possible to picture the crew standing there, rushing to complete tasks as instructions were passed along the narrow hallways. The torpedo room of the submarine was very eerie. Divers discovered that some torpedo tubes were still closed. This finding left more mysteries than solutions. Why did not the crew use the torpedoes if they were under attack? What caused the accident if it wasn't an attack? The torpedoes were missing, and in some areas of the submarine they were inaccessible. However, the clues found created a puzzling scenario. Signs of daily routines could be seen throughout the submarine, each having its story to tell. Rows of boots were carefully arranged against a wall. A basic shaving kit rested, ready for its next use. A rusty toothbrush was next to a cracked mirror which reflected a dim light from the divers' flashlights. This mirror seemed to hold the most heartbreaking memory, possibly from a crew member who looked at themselves on the day the submarine sank. They may have fixed their appearance, thought about their loved ones, unaware that it would be their final day. The divers felt very emotional when they discovered the wreck because they were amazed at how much had been preserved. The harsh conditions of the Atlantic Ocean, with its cold water, low oxygen, and darkness, had helped protect the submarine like a sealed treasure box. The rubber seals on the locker doors were still tightly attached. Fragile paper documents were still intact, although they had become delicate and fragile over time. Even clothing from the past, like uniforms with Nazi symbols and name patches, had managed to survive and were still there in the cold. Seeing those symbols made it difficult not to think about the bad parts of history, but it was also impossible to overlook the personal stories behind them. These men were caught in a large war beyond their control. Some may have believed in their cause, while others may not have cared. However, in the end, none of that made a difference. The ocean claimed them all without discrimination. The U-869 submarine was more than just a lost vessel. It had turned into a sacred site where memories and untold tales resided. Resting below the sea, it patiently waited for someone to discover it. John Chatterton, Richie Kohler, and their courageous diving team were able to bring the crew's voices to light. Each personal belonging, each sealed torpedo tube, every little item left behind revealed a part of the narrative. A submarine's silent secrets. The tale of U-869 is like wandering through a maze where each twist uncovers something fresh, perplexing, and eerie. Out of all the theories floating around about this submerged submarine, one in particular is the most horrifying. It's not about sabotage, treachery, or even errors made by the enemy. It revolves around something that struck fear into the hearts of every submarine crew, a dangerous error known as a circle runner. A circle runner is not just a typical malfunction. It's like a torpedo that has gone off course. Normally, when a torpedo is fired, it should go directly towards its target. However, sometimes things go haywire and the torpedo ends up spinning in a dangerous circle instead. Before the crew can figure out what's happening, the torpedo they launched turns back towards them, putting their submarine in danger. It's similar to setting a trap for someone else and then getting caught in it yourself. This awful situation was quite common in World War II. Both German and American torpedoes experienced similar issues. Many submarines were destroyed by their torpedoes. This was a tragic accident where sailors were left trapped and powerless as their torpedoes turned back towards them, ultimately ending their mission and their lives. Many people believe this is what happened to U-869. They think the submarine either fired a test torpedo or tried to attack, but the torpedo did not go where it was supposed to. Instead, it turned back and hit U-869. The damage found on the wreck reveals a tragic story. The metal on the submarine was pushed in, not blown out. Inside, the compartments were crushed and broken like a soda can crushed by something large. The damage to the submarine suggested that the explosion came from inside, not from an external attack. This theory is both frightening and plausible, offering explanations for numerous phenomena. However, there is more to the story. The United States Navy has a different version of events based on official records. According to them, U-869 was not destroyed by its weapon, but instead was deliberately sunk by American warships. This tale recounts how two American ships, the USS Howard D. Crowe and the USS Coiner, encountered a German submarine on February 11, 1945. They detected sound signals in the water and determined it was from a submarine. The American sailors collaborated to launch depth charges in a well-thought-out attack. Depth charges are explosive devices used to target submarines by creating intense pressure waves that can damage or destroy them. After the war, when military records were being organized and verified, the Navy documented this incident as the sinking of U-869. It appeared to be a straightforward situation. The Navy was confident that they had sunk U-869 on that day, and it was officially documented. However, the situation took a peculiar turn when divers eventually discovered the sunken ship. It was not in the exact location as indicated by the Navy, but rather close by. This discrepancy raised an important question. If U-869 had indeed been sunk during the battle, why was it not found where historical records claimed it to be? As the divers examined the sunken ship more closely, they discovered more mysteries. There were still sealed torpedo tubes on the submarine, which was unusual. It was strange that no torpedoes had been fired if the submarine was under attack. The damage on the submarine appeared to be more severe on the inside than the outside, suggesting it was not caused by depth charges. However, there was some damage to the outer hull that appeared to be caused by a pressure wave from a nearby depth charge. Despite this, the damage did not seem severe enough to indicate a direct lethal impact. The most significant damage was inside the submarine, particularly in the front sections. This is where a torpedo that circles back could have hit the submarine directly. There are now two conflicting theories about what happened to submarine U-869. One theory is that it was accidentally destroyed by its torpedo, while the other theory is that it was sunk by American ships during battle. Both theories have evidence to support them, but there are also gaps in the information. Some details do not fully align with either explanation. The story gets more complicated with the possibility that U-869 was on a secret mission. German military organization was chaotic towards the end of the war. There were issues with communication, confusing orders, and incomplete records. It is feasible that U-869 received new, unplanned orders that were not properly documented. Perhaps the submarine U-869 was sent to a different location, possibly even heading towards the United States. This could clarify why it was discovered in a surprising location. It could also explain why it did not unleash its torpedoes and why there was uncertainty about which submarine sunk it. It's possible that the Navy did sink a submarine on February 11, 1945, but it may not have been U-869. There could have been a mix-up in the logs regarding the submarine's identities. There is a theory that adds a mysterious element to the situation. Some believe that U-869 may have been on a secretive mission that only a few were aware of. It is possible that the submarine was transporting valuable materials or spies, or conducting covert operations. Although there is no concrete evidence to support this theory, the handling of the wreck and the lack of information following the recovery of artifacts has raised suspicion among some individuals. What occurred to U-869? According to the United States Navy, they claim that the submarine was destroyed by American destroyers. This has been their official explanation for quite some time. However, when speaking to individuals such as divers, wreck explorers, and historians who have closely examined the site, a different theory emerges. They are of the opinion that U-869 met its demise due to a malfunctioning torpedo. By analyzing the wreckage and the position of the torpedo tubes, they believe that the evidence suggests an internal mishap rather than an external assault. Each party presents their version of the events, but neither can definitively establish the truth. At the center of the controversy lies U-869, lying peacefully on the ocean floor, keeping its mysteries hidden. This is not just a story about a lost submarine, it's also about lingering questions. The mystery of what happened still lingers in the echoes of the water. The truth may be hinted at even in the silence. What do you think happened to U-869? Was it taken down by its weapon in a tragic twist of fate? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more celebrity gist. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.